Ken Callham, who is the Director of Project Operations for Connection and happens to be the chair-elect for NAED's lead committee and is currently on NAED's lead committee, has hopped on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast to join me to talk about the event. And Ken, hold tight for 1 second. Again, I'm going to remind you, the event is October 3rd through 5th. We're going to Denver. It's an amazing location. It's a great conference. You can still register. You should register. You need to register your leaders, your future leaders. Go over to naed.org/lead to join us and boldly step out. Ken, thanks for taking a couple of minutes out of your day, joining me on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. Take us in behind the scenes of the committee and some of the planning and some of the stuff that was going on. Tell me, I guess, how you arrived at boldly step out as being your theme and what it means for people who are going to be attending.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me this morning, Scott. Happy to make my inaugural appearance here on the podcast. So the committee, it's really a great group of people. We've got a fairly large group of manufacturers and distributors that make up the composition there. And going back to 2020, I believe, when we started the leadership development program and started working more closely with the Dale Carnegie group leading that, we started drawing on the core leadership competencies of that program to inform our themes for the lead conference. So far we've gone through several of them. I believe we've hit on from me to we. We've done Be Okay with the Gray, Never Settle last year in Milwaukee, and this year is Boldly Step Out. And the core tenets of that are being vulnerable and transparent. And we just think it's a really important component that might be overlooked at times when people think about leadership, is the importance of, not only being vulnerable yourself, but creating an environment where your people are allowed to bring their whole selves to work. That's the way that you're going to get the most out of people. It ties into a lot of other things that we've got in the program, including, our DEI panel that we're doing again this year with I Belong Here. And it's just, like I said, something that can at times be overlooked. And I think it's a really important aspect. Not everybody needs to be a hard, cold leader. It's, just as important to admit your mistakes, own them, learn from them, embody that yourself, and you can draw that out of your team.
It's a great, really cool makeup of committee members, because it's folks like you who are, next generation compared to folks like me. And so again, get me into some of those committee conversations. You guys are all leaders and emerging leaders who are on the committee. So get us into some of the conversation again about confidence and about, like you said, vulnerability, and why it became important to make this a part of this particular conference so future leaders can understand the value in those two things.
Sure. So things that we're considering as we're going through and planning the conference, we're looking at what past themes were, what workshops might have been more successful than others, or just components of the program. We very deeply dig into the feedback that the attendees provide. We've got I think some sort of engagement survey that goes out afterwards. So if you are attending, please do complete that. That really helps us make informed decisions going into the subsequent years, both in what we're working through and how we're doing it. But yeah, as we talked about this year, trying to build on what we've done the past few years. Being okay with the gray is kind of embracing ambiguity and working through times of uncertainty, and that was very appropriate as we were coming out of, I guess we might still be coming out of COVID, but the really heavy lifting of it back in 21. Never Settle, we thought, kind of coming out of the embracing ambiguity, that continuous development and improvement mindset was great. And I think that this really drives some of the aspects home of the past few years that we've had of, it, especially as we're talking about next generation and the opportunity that's ahead of this group right now. I know that you've had a lot of talk in the podcast about kind of generational changes and the next group of leaders kind of stepping in. We need to, make courageous decisions. We need to be okay with failing and learning from it. We need to encourage that in our teams that we're leading and working with. And we need to be able to do that publicly. And also, I can't stress enough how important it is to both be yourself and create an environment that others can be themselves too.
And give me your thoughts on this. That is, I believe, a learned skill, the vulnerability part. I mean, there's, think about, I think, some of the strangeness of it. You're going through an interview process because you want to get promoted into a leadership role. So you want to make it, you want to appear confident, you want to appear collected, you want to appear capable, you want to appear, like you have the abilities. But nobody really, at least in the past, and I think it's changing now, but nobody in the past really said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be really vulnerable. So people are going to see my true self. And you know what I'm saying? So It's sort of become, give me your thoughts on this, because it's sort of become, it's not really you don't learn that in business school. You kind of learn that in life and through the experience of going to the lead conference or watching other leaders and the way they behave. I mean, don't you, that to me is the value of the lead conference is this becomes a skill that you don't get in business school or you don't get within the office. You have to go someplace like lead to get that knowledge and to understand how it works.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point, Scott. And taking it back to the planning, we're really trying to find ways to keep it interactive and to have actionable takeaways coming back. So this year's conference is going to be a great opportunity for attendees to do that. And you're right, I wouldn't go into, even still, I don't know if it's something that like I'm outwardly talking about, although we will be for the duration of the conference. But it's something more that you kind of lead by example or demonstrate that competency, and it just kind of it makes it okay for others, and a lot of it's about how you react to others. And if I'm just going around and not admitting mistakes or blaming things on other people or not being myself, it's not going to create the environment that's going to be most productive.
So speaking of a productive environment, you and the committee and Blair Barlow, who's the chair this year, and everybody else really kind of shot for the moon here when it comes to the speakers and when it comes to the content in terms of, you got Stacy Stanislavski from Viking, who's, the high up. You got Franklin Sullivan from ABB, who are speakers. You got the folks from Dale Carnegie who's doing a session, and you got again, like you talked about earlier, the I Belong here. And then you got John O'Leary, who's our keynote speaker on the final day. Get me into, I guess, the process of hey, you know what? Let's go big this year. I mean, let's really have people who have strong leadership experience to really kind of explain, again, the vulnerability stuff. Folks who've been in the supply chain for a long time, but still are able to explain the vulnerability and the confidence part. What was the process to make sure you were getting as high-end speakers as possible?
So I've got to give Blair a ton of credit there. She really went to school on last year's theme of never settle. And from the jump, she was like, her enthusiasm was really infectious, and it was really important to her to, make sure that we've got the right bodies in the right slots here to keep it really an engaging, interactive conference. And I'll admit there were several times when I was like, presented with an option. I was like, you know what, this looks great, and she's like, no, this isn't going to get it done. So yeah, talking some more about the program itself. As you mentioned, the opening dinner and keynote, and a couple of the other sections that we've got some star-studded executives from our industry. And, that's the great thing about LEAD as well, and NAED, is that this isn't just generic leadership advice that we're getting. We're getting it straight from our industry, who have, taken the path that a lot of us are looking to achieve ourselves. And they are, we, even just because there might be a C at the beginning of a title, didn't mean that they were the right person to talk to our group. So yeah, there was a lot of consideration there. Of course, there's a ton of planning that goes into that. Everybody that we talk to, we vet through what their plan might want to be. They interview us as well for what we're looking to achieve in the conference, and we're super excited about who we ended up with.
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing is that I definitely want to point out in terms of the content is, and I know Connection's been very involved with I Belong Here. And if you haven't been exposed to I Belong Here, this is an opportunity again to come to the LEAD conference, because there's a session on what that program is and what they do for everybody who works at any place within our supply chain. So tell us, I guess, the importance that you see in the I Belong Here session that's going to be happening at LEAD.
Yeah, so this year is going to be slightly different than last year in the composition of the panelists. So last year was the first time we did it. If you're not familiar with I Belong Here, they've got what they call their Voices series, and it really struck me the first session or webinar that I attended, where it wasn't just executives talking to us, and it wasn't just hitting on some of the DEI demographics that you might normally come to mind immediately, race or gender. And it went a little bit deeper, and there were even a few panelists on there at first that I was wondering how they fit in. And as they then, Severn Bernardo does an excellent job of moderating those conversations, and he will be moderating our panel this year. But as they got into it, it's really about storytelling and talking about the vulnerability, and think about the vulnerability it takes for these panelists to share their stories. So last year was more executive focused. What can we do as leaders to either create environments or maybe best practices, things of that nature. This year, we're going to focus a little bit more on storytelling and lean into some of those maybe underrepresented DEI groups that you just might not think of immediately. And so yeah, we're really excited about the panel there, and it couldn't tie any better into the boldly step out, vulnerability and transparency theme. The recent I don't know, focus on DEI, particularly in our industry, is really important. We look around and we see a lot of faces that look like ourselves, Scott. And increasing the talent pool, increasing the perspectives, increasing the thoughts that are in our space is really going to allow us to take the electrical industry to the next level, and do the work that needs to be done to continue to help bring our country into the future. Right.
And I think that's a great point. And another thing I want to bring up with you and get your thoughts on, again, if anybody's sort of on the fence, should I go to LEAD? Should I not go to LEAD? I don't know anybody. I might be the only person from my company going. I've always observed, you've been to LEAD a few times. I've been to LEAD a whole bunch of times. I've always observed at like the receptions, at the opening dinner, at the roundtable discussions, at just kind of the networking opportunities, the LEAD committee, and not only that, but a lot of attendees too, are really sort of, for lack of a better term, glomming onto everybody. Like nobody stands there by themselves. Nobody has dinner alone. Nobody has, nobody is standing by themselves at a reception. Like you guys do a great job of making sure that there's a conversation going on with and everybody feels comfortable about being in the environment. One, do you see that? And two, kind of what's the importance of, again, that sort of networking and comfortability of being able to have conversations with, they don't have to be your partners. They can be your competitors, for crying out loud. But how do you see the importance of that part of the conference and the value that it brings?
I'm really happy that you brought this up because I'll share a little anecdote for myself when I first attended in 2019 in Nashville. We had a total of three of us attend from Connection, and as you're wont to do, you kind of stick with who you know, and it's a new group. It was my first NAED conference that I was attending, and I got I got a fair amount out of the experience, but what I took away most from that was we did a blue EQ workshop where we had like kind of a accountability buddy for some takeaways, and I've maintained that relationship for the past 4 years, and I still talk to her on a monthly basis at least about those important things. So I started to understand the importance of developing those relationships. And then I'll give a plug for the leadership development program as well. I took part in that, and I got to know a few of the lead committee members, and I had already expressed some interest in being a champion and getting more involved with the conference because I had such a great experience. But as I started to develop those relationships that, they were, fulfilling personally and professionally, and what I was able to learn from these like-minded people in our industry. So my recommendation to anybody that's on the fence for that reason in particular, or first-time attendees, or you're the only person for your company, step out, make yourself uncomfortable, boldly step out and talk to everybody that you can. Be engaged in the round tables. Go out to dinner with somebody that you don't know. When I bring people from my company now, I'm like, James, don't talk to me. Go to another table. Don't sit with me at the opening reception. We'll catch up later on tonight. But the value that I've gotten from the collaboration with other people in the industry, especially competitors. The great thing about NAAD is it's out of market. I can go to a networking event in Chicago and I'm like, staring across the table from somebody that I'm trying to win a lighting job against. Whereas, if I'm if I'm out at lead, you don't have quite the same competitive nature there. In some cases you do, but anyway, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of open dialogue about best practices, and the networking has been invaluable to me.
It's a great point. There's 150 plus other people who are going to be at LEAD who are ready to talk to you and hang out with you and enjoy the conversation. And again, just a reminder, it's October 3rd through 5th. We're going to Denver. There's plenty of time, even though it's less than a month away. Plenty of time to still register and get your room and be there and get this. It's only 3 days for crying out loud total, including travel. And so it's definitely worth the opportunity. Head on over to NAED.org/lead and register. Ken Callham, who's again chair-elect for the lead committee for NAED, thanks a ton for the work you've done on this conference, and thanks for taking a little bit of time to explain why it's important here on the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Denver. You ready to go?
I can't wait. Yeah, I'm super excited. Haven't been there in a while. Should be a great time of year to visit too.
Oh, good point. It is going to be a great time to visit Denver. So thanks a ton for hopping on the podcast too. If anybody has questions for me about the LEAD conference, or you got questions for me about TED Magazine things, whether it's tedmag.com or Lighted, the digital editions, e-newsletters, whatever it might happen to be, it's always two ways you can contact me. You can give me a phone call, area code 314-812-5311, or you can send me an email, scosta, SCOSTA at NAAD.org. Let's trade some ideas until we get a chance to talk again. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for listening to the Distributed with TED Magazine podcast.